Hello, the perpetually smug Anglo has returned. I actually observed something pretty interesting the other day, and I'd like to talk about it and maybe unpack it for the benefit of people watching. The quite surprising fact is that MGTOW actually gets around 5 times more searches than dating on YouTube. From this, I think we can conclude one of two things. Either a lot of people are invested in MGTOW, or there's a very large number of people who are very deep into MGTOW who keep searching it again and again. Whatever the case may be, there must be a pretty good reason as to why all of these men are going MGTOW. Personally, I think some of the reasons why people go MGTOW are actually extremely relatable, and I don't really understand why so many people take issue with it. I mean, if you can just point to a graph and you can see how many people are destroyed by divorce, the rates of marital constancy when it comes to number of sexual partners, or any other number of different statistics, and you focus on this alone from a modern perspective, then it becomes understandable why so many men are dropping out of the dating scene and avoiding women altogether. I actually lived with a guy who went MGTOW a few years ago, and he was understandably quite scared and, to be honest, quite angry. He had a lot of red pill rage surrounding what he was finding out on the internet each day. I myself was pretty terrified of the idea of being falsely accused of sexual assault. Of course men are going to be on their toes in this time, it's completely understandable, and the fact that the media keeps hammering down on people for these sorts of things is bloody ridiculous. However, despite how legitimate many of these fears are, that doesn't mean that how MGTOWs are living their lives in reaction to this is necessarily good for them. Many of you who are watching probably know deep inside just how depressing and how soul-crushing it is to see all of these instances of women being horrible to men. If your life consists in watching videos about women hacking the genitals off men and laughing about it, you're gonna be pretty miserable. And of course, to all those who say Nawalt, it must be really hard to listen, because you've seen this thousands of times. You look at the divorce statistics, you see all of these horrible things, and of course, you can't help but feel unhappy. As you listen to the tears of your fellow men as they cry about how their lives have been destroyed, it must feel very lonely. Not only the fact that you're seeing men being treated this way, but as your hope for a woman drops lower and lower as you realise how horrible so many women are. And as you see it over and over again, so many psychotic women cackling as they abuse and hurt men. It must drive you mad. It must drive you away from what you actually desire deep down, which is a sense of being whole. That deep, depressing tension between what you know will hurt you and what you actually desire deep down, which is really a cure to this loneliness, some intimacy maybe. And you can't seem to find the solution to it, because as far as you can tell, the society that you live in will not let you do it. And so you spend your days sat in your flat, wasting your time watching things that you know you get no satisfaction from, and wasting away what could be used to make children. You sit there, and because of this irresolvable tension, you're sat there and you just don't know a way out. Now, I'm sorry guys, I can't provide a societal solution to this. I just can't. There's no way I can reach into Western society and pull out the filth. But what I might be able to help you with, and I don't know, maybe I can't, but what I can try and help you with is how to live your life in a way that's happy despite all of these things. Now, I know, particularly to the people who aren't used to my content, a lot of my solutions are going to sound like they're really out of left field, but please, at least give them a listen. They might help you. There is not a single person here watching who cannot be happy, despite all of the adversity outside of them. All they need to do is find the right path. The first thing that I think needs to be sorted out by every single person watching here, I don't care if you're MGTOW or not, is that there needs to be a proper understanding of sexuality, because without that, you will be unhappy, and you will die unhappy. It has been forgotten by many people in our society, the horrible consequences of overindulgence in sexual pleasure. You may laugh, but that habit of watching indecent films that you have, that's actually destroying you, and you need to sort it out. In fact, if you really want to live a good life, you need to deal with all inordinate indulging in sexual pleasure, which is anything outside of the act with someone that you're married to. Our society has forgotten the value of sexual continence, and I think that a lot of the evil behaviours that many women carry out are as a result of the psychological consequences of being oversexed. Now, in short, the major issues that being oversexed caused is not being able to think clearly, it leads to arrogance, it leads to cruelty against those who would stop you indulging in such things. It leads to despair and to pride, and eventually in some cases, because the vision is so clouded, it leads to death. Now it only takes a very brief look at MGTOW, at PUAs or anything in the manosphere to see that this place is replete with filth. Now, like so many others, I could mock you for being Kumas. I could mock you, but it's not working. Why don't you listen? You're destroying yourself. You need to pull yourself out of it. How many of you here who are just lost in despair and can't seem to climb out? How many of you are dragged down by this over and over again? Even worse, how many of you live for this? How many of you, going through the various MGTOW channels, see all of this and you live for it? Be honest. Now, I can't stand the thought of spending my time in a society of people who are warped by their habits and they are unwilling, through their own arrogance and their own social conditioning, to drop these things. And the worst part is that people who are entangled in this, if you're entangled in this, you don't know how happy you can be if you just drop it. If you just drop entertaining any kind of lustful thought or entertaining any kind of lustful behaviour. None of this no fap stuff. None of this just, I'm going to let go of this habit so that I can indulge in something else. No, it needs to be utterly cut off or you will not be happy. Now, for those of you who can tolerate my perhaps strange rant, perhaps you think, well, how can I do this? The key to this is to remove your ability to do so as much as possible. So that might involve throwing away a phone and getting a dumb phone. That might involve tiring yourself out. That might involve staying away from your bed. It could involve all manner of things. But you're adults, you know where you fall, and you need to cut these things out. The easiest way for those who are on computers to do this is to edit their sources.list file, which, if you're on Windows and Linux and probably Mac, you can find as well. And I'll let you Google that one. The second thing that all of you need to do, and I mean all of you, is to avoid places that are going to just blackpill you. There is not a single person watching this video right now, man or woman, who doesn't know how horrible women can be to men. The question is are you going to stop reading it constantly, over and over again, even though you already know? Is it just going to be one more R9K thread or another video about a woman causing some horrible misery to a man? Or are you just going to eventually say, I've had enough, I know, I don't need to do this anymore? Now, I know many of you get a secret enjoyment out of sorrow, because that's just how human beings work. When you're habituated into a thing like that, then you're going to naturally start to gain pleasure from it. But for your own sake, you need to make a decision now to remove all blackpill content from your life. Because it's not helping you. You already know the facts. Why do you keep bombarding yourself with this? It's just making you unhappy. You might never ever be Chad. And frankly, for most of you, that's probably a good thing. You don't know how unhappy Chad actually is. But you don't need to constantly pretend that you're worthless. You don't need to constantly get angry about the injustices that are happening. It's not healthy. You need to cut it off now. And I really mean it. You're on YouTube right now, probably. Go into your subscriptions and remove the people who constantly post blackpills. You don't need them. And of course, I'm sure many of you are expecting, I'm going to suggest, go and find things which are better, which actually help you. But I'm going to add some qualifications. For the sake of all that is holy, please do not follow channels that are just about the hustle, or getting money, or drop shipping. Likewise, if you're inclined that way, please don't look into look maxing or anything like that. What you want to be doing is finding things that are going to give you peace. Hustle will never give you peace. It might give you money, and even then it's not guaranteed. But it will just be another idol. For you, it was probably once women, and then it will become money. I am reminded of the story of the Roman politician Crassus when he was captured by the Parthians after the Battle of Carrhae. After Crassus was killed, the Parthians poured molten gold down his throat to represent how he thirsted for money. Now you've got a choice. You can either live as Crassus lived, pursuing money, as the Parthians mocked, drinking down something that will never satisfy you. Or, alternatively, you can pursue those things that do. Now, I could evangelize at you like I often do, but I don't think that's actually going to work, because many of you think religion is simply a cope. And so, I'm just going to recommend books here. If you think that the way I'm living my life is some sort of cope, please tell me in the description, or alternatively, you can actually listen to what I have to say. The only way that you're going to be happy is if you finally find out that the world is so much more important than just bodily pleasure and about money, as our society pretends. And so I'm going to give you a few books that you might want to read, that you might finally find out that this is true. The first one I'm going to recommend is Dr. Edward Fayser's The Last Superstition. It's about new atheism and approaching it from a Roman Catholic theological perspective, and largely it's pointing out their errors. The second book I'm going to recommend is the Bible. This is a Roman Catholic Bible. Now, some of you may be thinking, lol, stupid religious person, right? But the oldest book in here is 3,800 years old. Why was it preserved? Was it preserved because people didn't know better? Well, the fact that we still have a lot of biblical scholarship nowadays, and really good biblical scholarship from people like Dr. Brant Petrie, should tell you that it really isn't. This is a book of wisdom. It has wisdom for living your life. It explains how to properly live your life, even in secular affairs. It's not just all prayer. It's not just all Bible beating, right? It's actually good wisdom. It contains how to run families. It contains how to run businesses. It contains a lot of things. A good grasp and a good and thorough study of the scriptures will help you immensely. And I would recommend that if you're going to study them, you get a good introduction to the scriptures. Now, I can wholeheartedly recommend to every single person here, without any kind of regret, a Catholic introduction to the Bible, the Old Testament, by the same Dr. Petrie and Dr. John Bergsma. The main thing which this is important for is giving you proper context when reading the scriptures. Because if you just go Bible bashing and just reading the scriptures for yourself completely, you're going to end up lost, because it's a really complicated book. Now, the final book I'm going to recommend is a little bit out of left field. But I know that a lot of you are really depressed, really unhappy, and really angry at women. And so I wanted to sort of give you this recommendation out of left field, and that is The Story of a Soul by St. Therese of Lisieux. Now, this book, not without its sad moments, is something that's really contrary, I think, to a lot of the red pill thinking. I can't think of a book, besides maybe the Bible, that is more contrary to that kind of thinking. And really, it's very beautiful. I think for a lot of people it will be a tearjerker, and I mean you men as well. I honestly think that so many of you need contact with another kind of life, another way of living. This Therese woman, she was a nun and died at the age of 23 of tuberculosis. And these are her memoirs. And they're very beautiful and they're very useful. And so, with that said, I would really stress, even though it's going to seem completely out of left field, that at least some of you give it a read. Now, for those who are still watching, I'd like to recommend that you watch another video which is about my approach to getting a girlfriend. The video itself isn't so much about the girlfriend getting as structuring your life, and you can click that here. If you're not keen on that, you can click anything on the end screen that is probably on your screen about now. And as always, as with every other YouTuber in existence, I'm going to ask you to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Particularly share. I'd like people to listen to this. I don't do this thing, so it can't be watched. I'd really like to hear particularly what MGTOWs think of what I've said. Even if that makes me a trad cuck. So, with that said, I'd like to say, have a lovely day everyone who's watched, and I'll see you later.